The afternoon heat shimmered through the redwood branches as Marcus Chen and his 7-year-old son Tyler explored the familiar hiking trail. What started as their weekly wilderness adventure turned into something that would alter their lives forever when Tyler suddenly stopped mid-stride, his head cocked at an unusual angle. "Dad, do you hear that?" Tyler whispered, pointing toward a section of disturbed earth barely visible beneath fallen branches. "Someone's tapping." Marcus knelt beside his son, pressing his ear close to the ground. At first nothing. Then, unmistakable rhythmic knocking from below the surface. Without hesitation, father and son began clawing at the soil, their hands working frantically until they uncovered the edge of a crude wooden container. Inside was a woman, conscious and terrified, her designer clothing contrasting sharply with the dirt surrounding her. Her striking features were etched with fear and desperate relief. As Marcus pulled her free, she gripped his forearm with surprising strength. "I have no family," she gasped, her voice hoarse but urgent. "But if I die, my sister will never know the truth." Then her eyes rolled back and she collapsed against him. Marcus had no idea that those cryptic words would unravel a conspiracy and bind 3 strangers together in ways none of them could predict. Marcus Chen hadn't planned to raise a son alone. At 42, the wilderness survival instructor with weathered features and steady hands had once imagined a different future, one filled with laughter, partnership, and shared dreams. That vision dissolved 8 years ago when Sarah, his college sweetheart and wife of 12 years, died in a car accident, leaving him with their infant son and a workshop full of memories at the edge of Redwood Valley. The workshop, which Marcus had constructed himself using reclaimed lumber and stone, stood as a monument to his determination. Rough-hewn beams, a wood-burning stove, and windows framing the towering trees created a sanctuary where he taught outdoor survival skills to locals and tourists. Inside, Tyler's artwork covered every available surface: drawings of animals, pressed leaves, and crayon renderings of their adventures together. Marcus found meaning in his work, guiding people through the wilderness he cherished while providing stability for Tyler. His students respected his quiet competence and deep knowledge of the land. Though concerned friends occasionally suggested he start dating again, Marcus channeled all his energy into raising his son and preserving the skills his own grandfather had taught him. Tyler Chin was every bit his father's apprentice. With curious brown eyes that absorbed everything and an analytical mind beyond his years, he could track animals, identify edible plants, and build a shelter with minimal tools. But he had inherited his mother's gentle spirit and infectious enthusiasm that drew people to him naturally. On their weekend excursions, Tyler shadowed Marcus through the forest, his small notepad always ready to document new discoveries. "Dad, how do birds know which direction to migrate?" Or, "Why don't some mushrooms poison the animals that eat them?" His elementary school teacher described him as exceptionally perceptive, a quality that would soon prove invaluable. While Marcus and Tyler lived their uncomplicated existence in Redwood Valley, 300 miles north in San Francisco, Victoria Ashford was dominating headlines. At 35, she served as CEO of Ashford Technologies, a $15 billion tech conglomerate she'd inherited from her adoptive father, Richard Ashford, 4 years earlier. Business publications dubbed her Silicon Valley's Iron Lady. Brilliant, calculating, and impossibly polished with her auburn hair and tailored power suits, she embodied corporate success. What the press didn't report was Victoria's secret philanthropy, anonymous funding for foster care programs across the state, or that her minimalist penthouse apartment contained almost nothing personal except a single photograph of Richard and a locked file cabinet holding her past. When Victoria vanished during what was supposedly a charity site inspection near Redwood Valley, her chief operating officer, Daniel Cross, released a carefully worded statement suggesting she'd suffered a hiking accident. Search teams combed the area for 4 days before the board reluctantly announced they'd continue operations under Cross's interim leadership. The tech world moved on quickly, assuming another executive had fallen victim to overconfidence in unfamiliar terrain. No one questioned why the search ended so abruptly. No one knew that Daniel Cross had orchestrated Victoria's disappearance after she discovered his elaborate embezzlement scheme, $40 million siphoned through fraudulent contracts and offshore accounts. And no one suspected that a survival instructor and his observant son would stumble upon her at precisely the right moment. Marcus drove his weathered pickup truck down the dirt road, constantly checking the rearview mirror where the woman lay wrapped in his jacket. Tyler sat beside her, his expression serious and protective, one small hand resting on her shoulder. "Is she going to be okay, Dad?" Tyler asked quietly. "I think so, buddy," Marcus replied, though his mind raced with questions. The deliberately dug hole, the sealed container, this wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to murder this woman, and whoever it was might be watching hospitals. Instead of heading to town, he turned toward home. His wilderness first aid certification would have to suffice until he understood the danger they were facing. At the workshop, Marcus settled the woman on the couch and began a careful assessment. Pulse steady, breathing normal. Minor bruising on her wrist suggested restraints. In her jacket pocket he found a sleek smartwatch engraved with "For Victoria with pride, R.A. Victoria." At least they had a name. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus tended to her while Tyler appointed himself guardian, reading aloud from his nature journals and arranging wildflowers in mason jars around the room. By evening, Victoria was fully conscious, sitting upright with a wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders, studying Marcus with sharp, assessing eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice gaining strength, "for pulling me out. For not taking me to a hospital. You understood the danger. You remember?" Marcus asked, surprised. She nodded. "Everything. Being drugged at my hotel. Waking up in that box. Hearing your son's voice." Her composure wavered. "If you hadn't been there?" "But we were," Marcus said simply. "The question is, are you safe here? Is my son safe with you here?" Victoria's gaze shifted to Tyler, who was drawing at the workbench, completely absorbed in his art. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm in considerable danger. And I would never forgive myself if it touched your family." Before Marcus could respond, Tyler approached with his drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath towering trees. "This is us," he announced, presenting it to Victoria. "You're smiling because you're not in the ground anymore." Victoria accepted the drawing, and Marcus watched her carefully constructed facade crack. "Thank you, Tyler," she whispered. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone's given me in years." After Tyler fell asleep that night, Victoria and Marcus sat at the workbench, the remnants of a simple dinner between them. Without preamble, she began explaining. "My name is Victoria Ashford. I'm CEO of Ashford Technologies." She watched Marcus's reaction carefully. "Recently, I discovered massive financial fraud in our charitable division. $40 million, maybe more, diverted to shell companies and fake initiatives. And you know who's responsible," Marcus said. "Daniel Cross. My CEO. My father's protege." Bitterness crept into her voice. "Someone I trusted completely. I was preparing to present evidence to the board when..." She gestured vaguely at herself. "Apparently murder seems simpler than prison." "You need to contact the authorities," Marcus insisted. Victoria shook her head firmly. "Not without ironclad proof. Right now it's my word against his, and I've been missing for weeks. He's already positioning me as unstable." She met Marcus's eyes. "I need time to recover. To think clearly. Then I need to return to San Francisco without anyone knowing I survived." "And the sister you mentioned?" Marcus asked. "When we found you, you said something about someone never knowing the truth." Victoria's expression softened, vulnerability replacing determination. "I was adopted at 9. My records were sealed, but I recently discovered I have a younger sister who was also put up for adoption. If I died in that box, she would never have known I existed. I would never have found her." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of family. "You can stay here while you figure things out," he decided. "We're remote enough that no one will think to look. But we need to be careful for Tyler's sake." Relief flooded Victoria's face. "Thank you. I won't stay long." Neither of them knew then that days would become weeks, and that 3 strangers would forge bonds stronger than any of them imagined. Days turned into weeks as Victoria regained her strength. She borrowed Marcus's flannel shirts, rolling up sleeves that hung past her hands, and insisted on helping despite his protests. To his surprise, she could start fires, cook over a wood stove, and even identify medicinal plants. "My adoptive father believed in practical knowledge," she explained when he commented on her unexpected abilities. "He started as a farm kid from Iowa before building his tech empire. He made sure I could survive without servants if necessary." Marcus noticed other things too. How she startled at sudden sounds. The nightmares that left her gasping awake. The way she positioned herself with clear sight lines to all exits. The trauma ran deep beneath her composed exterior. Tyler, however, saw none of these shadows. To him, Miss Vicky was fascinating. She could explain how computers worked, taught him about constellations, and listened to his endless questions with genuine interest. One evening, Marcus found them on the workshop steps. Tyler nestled against Victoria's side as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant purples and golds. "She makes you less sad," Tyler observed later as Marcus tucked him in. Marcus froze. "What do you mean?" "You smile more when she's here," Tyler said simply, then yawned and closed his eyes. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Tyler's observation troubled him, as did his growing reluctance to see Victoria leave. After 2 weeks, he still had no clear understanding of her plan or timeline. The next morning, while Victoria and Tyler explored the creek behind the workshop, Marcus finally searched her name online. His screen exploded with headlines: Tech CEO Victoria Ashford missing 3 weeks, search abandoned for Ashford Technologies leader, Daniel Cross takes control of $15 billion company. The professional photograph showed Victoria in a charcoal suit, her auburn hair in a sleek style, expression confident but distant. She looked nothing like the woman currently laughing with his son as they skipped stones across the water. When Victoria entered later, her arms full of smooth creek stones Tyler wanted to paint, Marcus slid his tablet across the workbench. Victoria Ashford, he said quietly, CEO of Ashford Technologies, missing for 3 weeks. The stones tumbled from her hands, scattering across the floor like accusations. She stared at her own image, color draining from her face. You looked me up, she whispered. I should have done it sooner, Marcus replied, keeping his voice low as Tyler painted contentedly nearby. Why didn't you tell me the complete truth about who you are? Would it have changed how you treated me? Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Would you have seen me differently if you'd known I was worth billions? The question caught him off guard. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe. Victoria nodded as if he'd confirmed something important. That's exactly why. For once, I wanted to be just Victoria. Not the Iron Lady, not the tech heiress, not the target. She met his eyes. Just a person. Marcus felt his frustration softening. I understand. But Tyler and I are involved now. I need to know everything about the danger, about your plan. Fair enough, Victoria conceded. Tonight, after Tyler's asleep, I'll tell you everything. That night on the workshop steps, under a sky brilliant with stars, Victoria revealed her complete strategy. I've been in contact with an investigative journalist named Rebecca Torres. She's been building a case against Daniel for months. Financial records, witness testimonies, board meeting transcripts. What she needs is proof that he tried to kill me. Without that, it's just embezzlement. And how do you plan to get that proof? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. By confronting him directly, Victoria said calmly, while wearing a recording device. Marcus stared at her, incredulous. That's insane. He already tried to kill you once. In a corporate office surrounded by security cameras, he won't try again, Victoria reasoned. Especially if he believes I have evidence stored somewhere safe. It's too dangerous, Marcus insisted. Victoria's expression softened as she touched his arm. Marcus, this is my battle. You've already done so much. You don't have to face it alone, he interrupted, the words escaping before he could reconsider. I'll go with you. I know how to move unseen. I can be your backup. Surprise and something more complex flickered across Victoria's face. What about Tyler? My sister can watch him for a few days, Marcus said, though the thought of leaving his son made his chest tighten. She's been asking for a visit anyway. Victoria studied him in the starlight. Why would you risk so much for someone you barely know? Marcus considered the question, searching for an answer that wouldn't reveal his confused emotions. Because it's right, he said finally. And because Tyler would never forgive me if I let anything happen to his Miss Vicky. 4 days later, disguised with her hair pulled back and wearing borrowed casual clothes, Victoria sat beside Marcus in his truck as San Francisco's skyline emerged on the horizon. In the back seat was a duffel bag containing recording equipment provided by Rebecca Torres. Their plan was straightforward but risky. Victoria would use her knowledge of building security to access Ashford Technologies after hours. Marcus would monitor from outside, maintaining contact via burner phones. Rebecca would stand by to publish immediately, ensuring Daniel couldn't bury the evidence. What they didn't expect was finding Daniel still at the office at 11 that night, working late in Victoria's former corner office. Change of plan, Victoria whispered into her phone. He's here. I'm confronting him directly. Victoria, no, Marcus started, but she'd already hung up and was striding toward the entrance. Marcus cursed and sprinted after her, reaching the building just as she entered the office. Daniel Cross looked up to see Victoria standing in the doorway, supposedly dead for weeks, and the color drained from his face as though he'd seen a ghost. Hello, Daniel, Victoria said calmly, closing the door behind her. Surprised? What followed was a confrontation that confirmed everything. Daniel's initial shock gave way to calculation, then to rage as he realized Victoria had outmaneuvered him. His confession, captured on the recording device, included not just the embezzlement but the calculated decision to eliminate Victoria when she got too close to the truth. When Daniel lunged for Victoria in desperation, Marcus burst through the door, restraining him until building security arrived. By the time police led Daniel away in handcuffs an hour later, Rebecca Torres had already published her exposé, complete with the audio recording. In a quiet cafe as dawn broke over San Francisco, Marcus and Victoria sat across from each other, exhausted but relieved. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Victoria stared out at the awakening city, so different from the peaceful mornings she'd grown accustomed to. "I rebuild the company. Restructure the charitable programs. But first," she turned to face him. "First, I find my sister." Marcus nodded, feeling an unexpected heaviness. "I should get back to Tyler." "Of course," Victoria said quickly. "Marcus, I don't know how to thank you both." "We'll be fine," he said gently. "That's just what anyone would do." "No," Victoria shook her head. "It's not. Most people would have called the police immediately. Or worse." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. "You gave me safety when I had nothing. You showed me what family truly means." Marcus clasped her hand briefly before pulling away. "Goodbye, Victoria. I hope you find what you're looking for." "Tell Tyler," her voice cracked. "Tell him Miss Vicky says thank you for hearing me." 6 months passed. Marcus returned to his routines, teaching survival skills, raising Tyler, maintaining the workshop. But something had changed. The space felt emptier somehow, despite being filled with the same furniture, the same memories. Then one November morning, Tyler called from the living room. "Dad, Miss Vicky's on TV." Marcus found his son pointing excitedly at the screen, where Victoria was being interviewed on a national morning show. She looked different, more polished in professional attire, her auburn hair styled elegantly, but her eyes held the same depth. "What message do you want people to take from your experience?" the interviewer asked. Victoria smiled, and Marcus saw the careful consideration behind it, that even in our darkest moments, hope exists. "A child heard me knocking when I was buried alive, and he and his father dug with their bare hands to save a stranger. They taught me that family isn't just about blood or business legacies. It's about who digs you out when you're buried, who hears you when no one else is listening." She looked directly into the camera then, as if she could see through it to their small workshop. "I owe them everything." Tyler turned to Marcus, eyes shining. "Can we go see her?" That opportunity came sooner than expected. When Victoria's case finally closed and she was formally reinstated as CEO, Marcus and Tyler attended the courthouse proceedings. As Mia had worn him down with persistent questions, Tyler had done the same. When Victoria spotted them at the back of the courtroom, time seemed to freeze. Then Tyler broke free and ran to her, and she knelt to catch him in an embrace. Later, in a quiet park with Tyler chasing squirrels nearby, Victoria and Marcus sat on a bench, the awkwardness of their reunion gradually easing. "I found her," Victoria said quietly. "My sister. She was adopted by a family in Portland. Her name is Claire. She's 20 now, studying marine biology." "That's wonderful," Marcus said, genuinely pleased. "It is," Victoria agreed, watching Tyler play. "But I realized something during these months of rebuilding. The time I spent in your workshop, even with everything that happened, I felt more at home there than I ever have in my penthouse." Marcus didn't know how to respond to the sudden intensity in her eyes. "I missed the simplicity," she continued, "the authenticity. I miss Tyler's endless questions and your quiet strength. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere, not because of what I own or who I am, but just because I'm me." "Victoria," Marcus began. "Could you give me a chance to be part of your lives again?" she interrupted. "Not as the woman you rescued, but as myself?" Before he could answer, Tyler ran back to them, breathless with excitement. "Dad, can Miss Vicky come see our new tree platform? Please?" Looking at the hope in both their faces, Marcus felt something in his chest unlock. He thought of the lonely months since Victoria left, how the workshop had seemed emptier, how often he'd caught himself looking toward the forest. "I think," he said slowly, a smile forming, "that's an excellent idea." The following year transformed all their lives. Victoria stepped back from daily operations at Ashford Technologies, building a trusted leadership team while focusing on meaningful charitable work. She purchased a modest cabin near Redwood Valley, close enough for daily visits but maintaining the independence they all needed. With her resources, she established a wilderness education center where Marcus now directed programs, teaching survival skills to at-risk youth and foster children. Tyler flourished with Victoria's influence, developing interests in both nature and technology that suggested a bright future. Victoria's sister Claire became a regular visitor, bringing her own gentle energy to their gatherings. 1 year to the day after Marcus had pulled Victoria from the earth, they stood together at that spot in the forest. Tyler had helped them mark it with a circle of stones, transforming a place of horror into something meaningful. "Strange," Victoria said, looking down at the circle. I should hate this place. But I don't. What does it represent? Marcus asked, standing close beside her. Rebirth, she said simply. The place where my new life began. She turned to face him, taking both his hands. Where I found my way home. Victoria slowly knelt before him, reversing traditional roles in a way that perfectly reflected her spirit. I don't have flowers or elaborate plans, she said, her voice steady despite tears shining in her eyes. Just gratitude and love. Marcus Chin, you dug me out of the darkest place imaginable. You showed me what family truly means. Will you let me spend the rest of my life returning those gifts? Marcus pulled her to her feet, cradling her face in his weathered hands. You saved me first, he whispered. Not the other way around. From behind a nearby tree, Tyler emerged with a handful of wildflowers he'd been secretly collecting. Can I be part of the ceremony? He asked, already certain of the answer. The wedding took place in that forest clearing with no media, no corporate associates, only the family they had built together. Tyler scattered wildflower petals along a path of pine needles. Claire stood proudly as Victoria's witness. And as they exchanged vows beneath the canopy of redwoods, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. From desperate knocking beneath the earth to this moment of perfect joy. The place meant as Victoria's grave had become instead the foundation of their life together. A reminder that even from the darkest depths, it was possible to rise, to breathe again, to find unexpected love. And somewhere in the forest around them, if one listened closely enough, the whisper of wind through the trees sounded almost like gratitude.